Story 1. I always felt I would not make a good mother. In my youth, I struggled with depression and was in an abusive marriage. I knew he wouldn't be a good father. Being the only child of a divorced mother, I knew firsthand what challenges single mothers face. The idea terrified me. My birth control failed once. I miscarried my boy at 4 months. In retrospect, that miscarriage was one of the real blessings of my life. After my divorce, I started a business which in the early years, I put about 60 hours a week into. I barely had time to walk my dog. I married my second husband when I was in my 50s. He came with 2 grown children and 1 boy still in college. The youngest and I became and still are best friends. He'll be 40 this year. Oddly, he is almost exactly 1 year younger than the child I miscarried would be. So, I'm a pretty good mom to adult children. Story 2. I have got a few, but the main ones would be 1. Poor genetics. 2. Depression. 3. The design of the world is inadequate. 4. Financial instability. 5. There is not enough time for that. 6. Lack of sexual activity. 7. People are disappointing, and we already have too many of them. Story 3. I like money and sleep and vacationing whenever I want and doing whatever I want, and the idea of not having to spend time watching 12-year-olds play soccer, and the idea of not being forced to be friends with parents, where the only thing you have in common with them is that you conceived at the same time in money and sleep. Story 4. I don't want to guide the development of a new psychology. I think there are already plenty of people. I don't believe the world will be a better place in the future. I'm poor, and the money I do have, I want to spend on myself and my hobbies. And overall, children annoy and depress me. Story 5. I don't feel the need to. I think feeling the need to have children should be a prerequisite. I've seen too many friends having children just because that's what I'm supposed to do. I hung out with a buddy today. He has 2 small children. They're very cool. But after 2 hours, I was done. He's a great dad and has much more patience than me. I don't think he has any regrets, but man, that life isn't for me. Story 6. My dad died of amyotrophic lateral sclerosis, and my mom has had 7 different types of cancer. They both died at age 67. I took care of sick parents for a decade from 2008 to 2018. I was 21 in 2008. By the time I hit 30, both of my parents had died. I felt like I missed out on a lot of living in my 20s. I wouldn't change caring for them in any way, but in 2015, I realized that I did not want kids for a lot of reasons, health history being a big one. I'm 37 now and am still very happy with that decision. I think I would have been a really good parent, but I'm happy with my Labrador. Story 7. I don't want to worry about anyone else but myself. I spent most of my life, and am still doing so, caring for a disabled relative, and I am mentally exhausted. I don't even know what it is like to put myself first. Story 8. I grew up in a daycare and I was 3 out of 7. I'm 36, and my youngest sibling is 12. I've watched 100 youngsters grow in my life. I don't feel the need to reproduce. Plus, I'm busy, and my partner does not want children. Not everyone needs to reproduce. Story 9. My wife was incapable, and we were aware of that before we got married, and we chose not to adopt. I am now happy to say, after 33 years of marriage, that we have no regrets, and I will be retiring early next year, debt-free. Story 10. I see how all of my friends who have had kids are empty shells of the once adventurous, passionate, vivacious people they were. Now, they just parent around the clock, and I look back on photo albums of all of us before having kids, and they just look so much happier. Story 11. Because it's absurdly expensive to raise children, most mistakes from your children could potentially set you back by hundreds of dollars if they're particularly drastic. The worldly resources are too scarce to ensure they're well off when they grow up, and we've sentenced them to an existence of long-term struggling for their dreams and hopes, some of which will sadly never come true. Story 12. Maybe not the intended audience, but I haven't been able to conceive after my miscarriage. It's terrifying to think about parenthood, but I'm willing to put everything into this if I get the opportunity. Story 13. This makes me happy that adults are living their lives without the pressure of having children. We get to choose our paths and decide what's best for us. Plus, in this society, why would you want to try to raise a child in this chaos? Story 14. I am not interested in having children who would grow up watching me become more disabled due to my disease. I already have a hard enough time with my significant other watching and helping me. I would never want to bring a child into this world to essentially become a caretaker. I always grew up wanting to be a mom prior to getting sick. Story 15. Because I have never even been fortunate enough to have a girlfriend or the income level to comfortably support them, I also do not want the work and anxiety of taking care of another living being. Story 16. I wanted kids. Then my ex-boyfriend coerced me into having an abortion, threatening to ruin my life, harass me, and call Child Protective Services on me constantly if I went ahead with the pregnancy. So I caved. I was so brokenhearted and wrecked from that experience. I quit my job and lived off the money he gave me to bribe me with. It took me a good few years to make my head okay again, and my family then crawled out of the woodwork to destroy what was left of my sanity. By the time I met and married my husband, I was in my early 40s without a good career, and in vitro fertilization would have been out of the question. Story 17. I don't want to bring a child into this situation. It's only going to get worse. I wish I had more hope for the future, but I don't. I'm not naive enough to be that positive. Story 18. After being in failed relationships, I decided my life is good as is. I have loved ones in my inner circle who I shower with affection and live my life my way. Story 19. I like the idea of having children, although in reality, kids seem like a headache. It's a huge responsibility, and I don't think a lot of people realize just how serious being a parent is until it's too late. Story 20. Birth is terrifying. I like my freedom, sleep, and don't want my life to become controlled by another being. I find kids annoying a majority of the time. The world they would grow up in is terrible. Also, there's already so many people in this world. Story 21. Because of my gender, I would be forced to carry and birth them. If I could just express milk, leave quickly, and only be surprised 18 years later with a self-important life purpose, I might consider it. Story 22. I am a queer woman who has never romanticized the idea of raising kids with my partner, nor succumbed to the pressure my culture and parents want me to in having kids. I don't think it would be fulfilling for me. Story 23. One I frequently see is the fear of repeating their own parents' mistakes. For me, it is the lack of privacy from the time of giving birth until your children move out. I value my alone time. Maybe that'll change one day, though. Story 24. I had one child and realized it was very hard, so I didn't have any more. I figure everyone with 0 children realized this without having to go through pregnancy. Story 25. Pregnancy would be a special kind of hell I just do not want to put myself through. I have multiple medical conditions that would undoubtedly be aggravated by a pregnancy, and there is a reasonable chance I would be so screwed up by the pregnancy that I would not be able to care for the kid afterward. Even if I adopted, I am just not sure I would have the energy to care for a kid. Story 26. My cats are already expensive as it is. I love the little guys, and honestly, despite their occasional shenanigans and spitefully knocking my cup off the nightstand while staring me in the eyes, and the small chance that they're always secretly plotting to destroy humankind, they're still a lot lower maintenance than children. I'm content being a childless cat dude. Or I should say, we're content being childless cat people. And on a sincere note, this might sound like I'm committing to the destruction of the nuclear family, but our cats still feel like family. I mean, they don't pay rent, but neither would Uncle Larry if he were staying with us. Story 27. Having kids will be physically challenging for me. So when I do decide to have one, I'll have to have all my finances in order. In vitro fertilization is expensive and becoming more uncertain as more laws get passed. So there's a chance I'll have the money but not the access. Story 28. I always tell people if they are not 100% sure about having kids, don't have them. This is something you really have to want to survive the hard days. And there are a lot of hard days. Story 29. My husband and I met a little later in life. We got married when I was 37. I am 39 now. We have never been 100% on having kids, but between my age and reproductive rights being stripped away, we do not want to enter into a high-risk pregnancy, especially when we do not have a strong desire to have kids. We have 4 nephews and 3 nieces between us, along with our sweet dog to spoil. We are content. Story 30. Why would you want to bring a new life into a world like this? It's full of struggles, and it's kind of irresponsible when people are actually just taking chances on having kids. Story 31. Too hard a life that I didn't get to. My mom died when I was 18, and my grandparents depended on her and turned to me. My brother was younger, my father was toxic, and even stole money from us. It was all up to us kids to pay our own way and our grandparents' way. To make it worse, we had really difficult financial circumstances and a lot of debt to pay off, medical debt for my mom that ended up on my grandparents' credit cards, and other hardship debts as she was a single mother. It all fell to me and eventually my brother too, and we grew up pressured and conditioned to neglect ourselves to extremes and work so hard without breaks. Guilt into it. Your mother would have wanted you to keep this house she fought hard to have for us, etc. And 2 decades later, I still have so little of my own, and I am deeply sad I missed out on motherhood. Despite all that, I did try at one point. I was married for some years, but my ex also became abusive, and I was always holding up so much for everyone. I lost the one pregnancy I had. It was devastating. Then I got divorced. Then COVID and health problems came. I never got the chance, and I'm still deeply heartbroken about it as I approach my 40th birthday. Part of me wishes I had run away from it all after my mom died, made a life of my own instead, took care of myself, got myself therapy much sooner in life, and lived. Instead, I existed to serve others and missed out on a family of my own. My brother and I are only just in the next few years going to hopefully finally be in a better place financially, and it was so very hard fought. 20 years of survival mode. I still wish I could have been a mother and had my mother around for it. Story 32. Don't want kids, can't afford kids. The world is so messed up that even if I did want kids, I wouldn't want my kids to have to live through all this. Life is not fair and life is not kind. If you think otherwise, then good for you. Story 33. Here is the revised text with corrections and improvements suitable for Azure Text-to-Speak AI. They are a pain in the rear. They are expensive as anything. I do not want to subject another person to this poor quality world. Having a child will ruin my body. I have better things to do than to babysit for 18 years. The world is not going to run out of people. Story 34. I raised my brother because my mom was an alcoholic who I also took care of. I was a kid raising a kid. I didn't want to do that as an adult. Plot twist. I never gave up taking care of either of them, and my elderly mother, long sober, now lives with me, as does my younger brother and a dog that I now take care of as well. Some days it's okay and other times I hate my life. I've never really gotten to be free of that caregiver responsibility. No way in hell I'm adding a kid to that mix. Story 35, so many reasons. I'm also annoyed by my Facebook friends who have children and their entire feed becomes reports on what their kids are doing, as if anyone cares but them. Story 36. I always wanted children, but it didn't work out. I'm okay with that. I grew up watching several bizarre moral panics pop up surrounding children. As I got older and saw more people I knew starting families, I started to wonder if partial lobotomies were given to parents during childbirth. A kid, kind of. I was honestly disturbed by the changes I saw. It's perfectly natural, biological, for parents to have an intense focus on the baby, but I'm not sure if it's natural to be all consumed with intrusive thoughts for years on end while losing the ability to think and reason to the degree I saw. There is an excessive culture of fear that goes hand in hand with parenting in America. It's been around for a long time and has little to do with real concerns about school shootings, which has added on to parental stress and worry. This fear is heaped on parents, and I truly do feel for them. It shows when you listen to a friend explain why she wouldn't allow her daughters to walk across their own yard and check the mailbox until they were in high school, and she stood in the doorway imagining strangers in a white van pulling up and abducting them and having a panic attack. On top of that, laws surrounding parenting have become more belligerent due to excessive parental fear with each passing decade. Some towns have written laws stating that parents have to hold onto the seat of their 10-year-old child's bike and run behind them the entire time they are riding. I ended up being relieved that I didn't have kids. The financial aspects, time constraints, and state of the world are worryingly enough. Story 37. The whole concept of pregnancy and giving birth is scary and painful as anything. I saw a lot of my friends and family go through immense pain, and some of them had long-lasting issues after the whole thing. There are a lot of gross and chilling side effects that no one warns you about, and I sure as hell don't want to suffer through this. Story 38. I was never in a financial situation where I could afford to have children, and I never found a partner who also wanted them. Now that I sort of am in a better financial position, it's a little too late, and I still don't have enough to afford them on my own. Story 39. As a woman, it's a thankless job. Once you have a child, you will always be the second priority. God forbid you raise a thankless one too. The stories of kids expecting their mom or dad to stay in horrible relationships for the sake of a nuclear family are also terrifying. It takes a lot of intention for a child to see their parents as actual people with thoughts, desires, and flaws, and by the time they do, it's sometimes too late. I don't want all the pressure. I'm happy my partner agrees as well. We've accepted our role as the sexy aunt and uncle.